Fairly recently, YouTube recommended a couple videos of this gouache set to me. It kind of started with me watching one video, which spiraled into YouTube recommending a bunch of videos to me, which also spiraled to me looking up videos of this gouache set, which eventually led to me getting it for myself. So this is the MIYA HIMI gouache set. A lot of people also refer to it as the Jelly Cup gouache just because it does come in these very non-stereotypical gouache cups. Normally gouache comes in tubes. That's the only way I've ever seen it. So right off the bat, this is something that's very not standard, but that's definitely not a bad thing. So in people's videos of opening this gouache set, they've struggled opening it. I kind of did. I only did with the black one. It was definitely time consuming, but I only struggled with the black one at the very least, so that's nice. But more so about this gouache set. So obviously it comes with 18 colors. Each color comes with 30 milliliters of paint, which is a lot of paint, and it is actually relatively cheap. I would say it's more than relatively cheap. I would say this is really cheap for what you're getting. This set I got for less than $20 US dollars off of Amazon. I think it was around 18, and then there was like a 5% off coupon, which isn't much, but 5% is 5% if you're saving it, so I'll take it. But right off the bat, this was a very, very cheap set. I've heard lots of praise of this set, so I was very curious to see how it fared for myself. And right off the bat, I would just like to say, by no means am I experienced with gouache. I've actually only ever worked with Arteza gouache before, so I'm not really sure the difference when it comes to professional gouache. I don't have any experience working with any kind of professional gouache, so my opinions on this are definitely more from a beginner's standpoint. Like I've said, I've worked with the Arteza one, so I do have kind of an idea of how gouache works. It's kind of like a baby between watercolor and acrylic, which is really nice for me because I don't really like working with acrylics, but I love working with watercolors, and I do like the opaque look of acrylics, but I really don't like working with acrylics. So I was really excited to swatch these paints because I have heard really good things about them, and the packaging itself, just opening these paints was such a nice experience, minus like the tedious part of unpackaging everything, but it was just like a really pretty paint palette. This one comes in a light pink or a mint, and I actually have seen larger sets of this on Amazon, but they come, I don't know, they're huge. It comes with an extra row, and those ones, I think there's like a yellow color and a mint color. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, this is such a cute little paint thing. It's huge. This one in of itself is still really big. Compared to my watercolor palettes, this one is probably like nearly 2 times the size. So this is definitely a big boy, but it makes sense because of how much paint comes inside. So like I said, there's 30 milliliters in the HIMI MIYA gouache versus in the Arteza gouache, they're 12 milliliter tubes. So this is definitely more than you'd get in a normal standard size tube of watercolors. I know the M-grams, at least I'm pretty sure the M-gram gouache comes in like 15 milliliter tubes. So even then you're getting more than twice the normal color as you would per like one, I don't want to say one tube because it's not a tube, but I don't want to say like one serving because it's not food. Don't eat this. But, you know, one stereotypical container of it. And the paintings I just showed on screen are all paintings I've done with this gouache. I did want to play with it a lot before I actually ended up making this video rather than just doing like initial painting and doing all of my reflections and my opinions on the gouache off of that. But right off the bat, let me just say I really enjoyed working with this gouache set. It was obviously a very pretty gouache set, but on top of that, because it comes with so much paint, I don't feel bad about using a lot of it or having some in my palette and ending up washing that away because my palette's too full of paint. Like, I don't know, it was just so much fun working with this paint. There was no pressure behind it, and it comes with such a nice color selection that I don't feel pressured about mixing colors. I'm actually really proud of myself lately because with my new watercolor set, I've had to push myself to mix darker shades and like mix my own blacks every time and stuff like that. So I'm really proud of myself for how far I've come with color theory and just mixing my own colors as a whole, but it is really nice, especially when you're starting with a new supply, to have more colors given to you. And quite frankly, I think this one is like more than everything you could possibly want for it. You'd have to mix skin tones and stuff like that, but like this does come with a really nice set of colors. And onto the paint itself, honestly, I was so impressed with how well this paint worked. It was like, in my opinion, this paint is so much better than the Arteza gouache, which is around the same price, but this one will come with so much more paint. This was just like such a joy to work with. It's like surprisingly not chalky at all. There's the texture that comes with gouache on top of it because it's opaque. Obviously there's going to be some kind of feel because it's not all getting soaked into the paper, but it's not chalky at all. The pigment does not rub off onto your skin, which I was really surprised with because I know with my artesian gouache the pigment rubs off onto your skin, and that's something that I'm not a huge fan of, but I kind of understand when it comes to gouache. So when I was doing tests of this, I was like beyond impressed that that was not a thing that happened, and it wasn't chalky. It felt really nice. It re-wetted really easy, and on top of that it also blended really easy. This was just like such a fun product to work with and such a fun set to work with because like it's also really cute. So like it's aesthetically pleasing and it's actually functional, which that's kind of hard to get both a lot of the times. You only normally get one or the other, or you're spending a lot of money on getting both. But I definitely recommend this set if you're looking to get started with gouache, or if you've, like me, you've tried the artesian gouache and you just wanted to try a different brand without breaking the bank, because this comes with a ton of paint and it's like really nice color selection. It comes with its own palette, which is really nice because you don't have to worry about other factors. It's all in one. I know this brand also sells like brushes and stuff on Amazon, and I've actually even recently seen watercolors that they do on Amazon. I didn't try any of those because I'm very happy with my brush selection and I don't care for trying any more student grade watercolors, so I didn't really care for any of that. I was mainly focused on the gouache, but like I said, I'm really impressed with these paints. I'll definitely be using them in the future. There's only like a couple of cons to them, and really they're not that big of a deal. The first one would be that when they do dry on the palette, they do flake pretty bad if they're like larger chunks. If it's really thin paint on the palette, it doesn't flake, but like if you have anything thicker than just like a small layer, I don't want to say it's like a super small layer, but if you have like a layered dried piece on the palette, that will flake off. If you have a chunk that dried on the palette, that will flake off. It's not the biggest deal in the world, especially since you're getting so much paint in the long run anyways, but I definitely don't think these paints would dry well. That I can say with confidence. I don't think they'll dry well at all. They do re-wet really well, but I think if you get to the point with this palette that they like completely solidify, they just won't treat you right, I guess. I don't know. I don't think I'll get to that point. What I've actually been doing with them is adding water into them, which I'll show at the end of the video just to make sure they stay wet, but yes. And then on top of that, another thing is that the paints kind of stain the palette itself, which isn't a big deal. It's a plastic palette, so you kind of expect that. And while it's not like visually pleasing, it stained mine a little bit yellow. It's not a big deal. That doesn't affect the process at all. That doesn't affect the paints at all. That's just something to know, I guess, if you're interested in that. But like I said, that really shouldn't be a problem at all. But I did notice that even just the short amount of time that I was working with the paints, they did start to dry out already. So like I said, I actually was adding water to them as I was working with them, or like at the end of my session, I would just add water. So I have this little dropper that I got from, I think, Hobby Lobby, that I just have water in, and pretty much whenever I see them getting thirsty, I just put some water on them and let it sit like that. It just rehydrates the surface, because I know for the time being, it's not drying from like the outside in, it's just drying from the top down for the most part, just because they haven't been sitting out a lot. The case itself does a really good job of keeping them not dried out, but just in case I'm doing that, I know it'll get to the point where I'll actually have to mix the water into the paints once it starts hardening more of the way through, but for the time being, since they are fairly fresh from being opened, I'm not going to worry about them. But again, I would just like to praise these paints one more time because they were so nice to work with. So I would definitely recommend these to anyone who's trying gouache, wants to try new brands, etc., because they are a really low price point for what you're getting. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.